Literacy is traditionally understood as the ability to read, write, and use arithmetic. The modern term's meaning has been expanded to include the ability to use language, numbers, images, computers, and other basic means to understand, communicate, gain useful knowledge, and use the dominant symbol systems of a culture. The concept of literacy is expanding in OECD countries to include skills to access knowledge through technology and ability to assess complex contexts. The key to literacy is reading development, a progression of skills that begins with the ability to understand spoken words and decode written words, and culminates in the deep understanding of text. Reading development involves a range of complex language underpinnings, including the awareness of speech sounds, spelling patterns, word meaning, grammar, and patterns of word formation, all of which provide a necessary platform for reading fluency and comprehension. Once these skills are acquired, a reader can attain full language literacy, which includes the abilities to apply to printed material critical analysis, inference and synthesis, to write with accuracy and coherence, and to use information and insights from text is the basis for informed decisions and creative thought. The inability to do so is called illiteracy or analphabetism. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization defines literacy as the ability to identify, understand, interpret, create, communicate and compute, using printed and written materials associated with varying contexts. Literacy involves a continuum of learning in enabling individuals to achieve the goals, to develop the knowledge and potential, and to participate fully in their community and wider society. History. Origins of literacy. Literacy is thought to have first emerged with the development of numeracy and computational devices as early as 8000 BCE. Script developed independently at least 4 times in human history in Mesopotamia, Egypt, lowland Mesoamerica, and China. The earliest forms of written communication originated in Sumer, located in southern Mesopotamia about 3500–3000 BCE. During this era, literacy was a largely functional matter, propelled by the need to manage the new quantities of information and the new type of governance created by trade and large-scale production. Writing systems in Mesopotamia first emerged from a recording system in which people used impressed token markings to manage trade and agricultural production. The token system served as a precursor to early cuneiform writing once people began recording information on clay tablets. Proto-cuneiform texts exhibit not only numerical signs, but also ideograms depicting objects being counted. Egyptian hieroglyphs emerged from 3300–3100 BCE and depicted royal iconography that emphasized power amongst other elites. The Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system was the first notation system to have phonetic values. Writing in lowland Mesoamerica was first put into practice by the Olmec and Zapotec civilizations in 900–400 BCE. These civilizations used glyphic writing and bar and dot numerical notation systems for purposes related to royal iconography and calendar systems. The earliest written notations in China date back to the Shang dynasty in 1200 BCE. These systematic notations were found inscribed on bones and recorded sacrifices made, tributes received, and animals hunted, which were activities of the elite. These oracle bone inscriptions were the early ancestors of modern Chinese script and contained logosyllabic script and numerals. These examples indicate that early acts of literacy were closely tied to power and chiefly used for management practices, and probably less than 1% of the population was literate, as it was confined to a very small ruling elite. Origins of the alphabet. According to social anthropologist Jack Goody, there are two interpretations that regard the origin of the alphabet. Many classical scholars, such as historian Ignaz Gelb, credit the ancient Greeks for creating the first alphabetic system that used distinctive signs for consonants and vowels. But Goody contests the importance of Greek culture. The subsequent history of Western Europe has led to an overemphasis by classicists and others on the addition of specific vowel signs to the set of consonantal ones that had been developed earlier in Western Asia. Thus, many scholars argue that the ancient Semitic-speaking peoples of northern Canaan invented the consonantal alphabet as early as 1500 BCE. Much of this theory's development is credited to English archaeologist Flinders Petrie, who, in 1905, came across a series of Canaanite inscriptions located in the turquoise mines of Serabit el-Khadim. 10 years later, English Egyptologist Alan Gardner reasoned that these letters contain an alphabet, as well as references to the Canaanite goddess Asherah. In 1948, William F. Albright deciphered the text using additional evidence that had been discovered subsequent to Goody's findings. This included a series of inscriptions from Ugarit, discovered in 1929 by French archaeologist Claude F. A. Schaeffer. Some of these inscriptions were mythological texts that consisted of a 32-letter cuneiform consonantal alphabet. Another significant discovery was made in 1953 when 3 arrowheads were uncovered, each containing identical Canaanite inscriptions from 12th century BCE. According to Frank Moorcross, these inscriptions consisted of alphabetic signs that originated during the transitional development from pictographic script to a linear alphabet. Moreover, he asserts, these inscriptions also provided clues to extend the decipherment of earlier and later alphabetic texts. The consonantal system of the Canaanite language inspired alphabetical developments in subsequent languages. During the Late Bronze Age, successor alphabets appeared throughout the Mediterranean region and subdeveloped into 3 languages: Phoenician, Hebrew and Aramaic. According to Goody, these cuneiform scripts may have influenced the development of the Greek alphabet several centuries later. Historically, the Greeks contended that the language was modeled after the Phoenicians. However, many Semitic scholars now believe that ancient Greek is more consistent with an early form Canaanite that was used c. 1100 BCE, while the earliest Greek inscriptions are dated c. 8th century BCE. Epigraphical comparisons to Proto-Canaanite suggest that the Greeks may have adopted the language as early as 1100 BCE, and later added in 5 characters to represent vowels. Phoenician, which is considered to contain the first linear alphabet, rapidly spread to the Mediterranean port cities in northern Canaan. Some archaeologists believe that Phoenician scripture had some influence on the developments of the Hebrew and Aramaic alphabets based on the fact that these languages evolved during the same time period, share similar features, and are commonly categorized into the same language group. When the Israelites migrated to Canaan between 1200 and 1001 BCE, they also adopted a variation of the Canaanite alphabet. Baruch ben Neriah, Jeremiah's scribe, used this alphabet to create the later scripts of the Old Testament. The early Hebrew alphabet was prominent in the Mediterranean region until Chaldean Babylonian rulers exiled the Jews to Babylon in the 6th century BCE. It was then that the new language emerged and the older language rapidly died out. The Aramaic alphabet also emerged sometime between 1200 and 1001 BCE. As the Bronze Age collapsed, the Arameans moved into Canaan and Phoenician territory. territories and adopted the scripts. Although early evidence of this writing is scarce, archaeologists have uncovered a wide range of later Aramaic texts, written as early as the 7th century BCE. Due to its longevity and prevalence in the region, Achaemenid rulers eventually adopted it as a diplomatic language. The modern Aramaic alphabet rapidly spread east to the kingdom of Nabataea, then to Sinai and the Arabian Peninsula, eventually making its way to Africa. Aramaic merchants carried older variations of the language as far as India, where it later influenced the development of Brahmi scripture. It also led to the developments of Arabic, Pahlavi, as well as for a range of alphabets used by early Turkish and Mongol tribes in Siberia, Mongolia and Turkestan. Literacy at this period spread with the merchant classes and may have grown to number 15 to 20% of the total population. The Aramaic language eventually died out with spread of Islam, and with it, its influence of Arabic, ancient and post-classical literacy. Until recently, it was thought that the majority of people were illiterate in ancient times. However, recent work has challenged this long-held notion. Anthony Dorenzo asserts that Roman society was a civilization based on the book and the register, and no one, either free or slave, could afford to be illiterate. Similarly, Dupont points out, the written word was all around them, in both public and private life. Laws, calendars, regulations at shrines, and funeral epitaphs were engraved in stone or bronze. The Republic amassed huge archives of reports on every aspect of public life. When the Western Roman Empire fell apart, literacy became a distinguishing mark of the elite, and communication skills were politically important. Even so, in pre-modern times it is unlikely that literacy was found in more than about 30 to 40% of the population. In the late 4th century, the Desert Father Pachomius expected literacy of a candidate for admission to his monasteries. They shall give him 20 psalms or 2 of the Apostles' epistles or some other part of Scripture, and if he is illiterate he shall go at the 1st, 3rd and 6th hours to someone who can teach and has been appointed for him. He shall stand before him and learn very studiously and with all gratitude. The fundamentals of a syllable, the verbs and nouns shall all be written for him, and even if he does not want to, he shall be compelled to read.